welcome you today to our inaugural, our first kickoff event for the year, in person again and online, a new world we live in. Meme Wars, the untold story of the online battles upending democracy in America, with our invited speaker and guest, Professor Joan Donovan. This is the first event this year sponsored by the Jack Pelton Center for the Study of Democracy with the School of Social Science and the University of California, Irvine, on the crisis of democracy facing our nation. In these talks, our goal is to spotlight not only the ongoing crisis of democracy, which we've been talking about in a group as a community for years now, but also engage in discussions about what we can do about it and turn our research and ideas and findings into action. We have been consistently worried about the quality of democracy in the United States, but what's new in this contemporary period is a growing sense of urgency, that the crisis is worsening, and that the threat of democratic backsliding is real and risks becoming entrenched. In today's discussion, we address the threats of extremism and political misinformation for our democracy. The erosion of shared common understandings of public problems are the glue to democratic systems and have been eroding. There's been a proliferation of belief in political misinformation, both within the mass public and now increasingly perpetuated by our elites, as evidenced by the persistence of the Stop the Steal movement, and reporting today that a majority of GOP candidates running for Senate, House, and statewide offices have denied or continue to question the results of the last election, perpetuating the false, unsubstantiated, and repeatedly discredited claim that the 2020 election was fraudulent and stolen from then President Trump. Today, we're going to raise questions about the impact of such rampant misinformation. Where do such false claims originate, and how do they take root in our society? How do they influence political trust, our commitment to democratic principles, and to the policy process itself? How does this misinformation move from message boards and become transformed into on-the-ground action, jumping into the halls of our nation's capital? And what can we do about it? To address these questions today, we're joined by two nationally acclaimed experts in our field. First, moderating our debate is Professor Jim Weatherall, professor in our Department of Logic and Philosophy of Science and an expert on misinformation. Together with his co-author, Kaylin O'Connor, Professor Weatherall was recipient of a major NSF grant on misinformation, which resulted in the recent publication of their celebrated 2019 book, The Misinformation Age: How False Beliefs Spread, published in Yale University Press. Professor Weatherall will be leading our discussion of today's presentation with Professor Joan Donovan of Harvard University's Shorenstein Center. Professor Donovan is research director of the Shorenstein Center on Media, Politics, and Public Policy, and lead researcher of the Technology and Social Change Research Project at Harvard Kennedy School. Professor Donovan's research and teaching interests are focused on media manipulation, the effects of disinformation campaign, and adversarial media movements, with a focus on how social movements, political parties, governments, corporations, and other network groups engage in an active efforts to shape media narratives and disrupt social institutions, which means in that single paragraph that you appeal to basically all of UCI School of Social Science. So outstanding. Professor Donovan's research is expansive, covers historic origins of extremism in America to this contemporary talk we're having today. So without further ado, Professor Donovan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. All right. For some reason, I have a little frog in my throat, and I didn't 10 minutes ago, so I apologize if I have to clear my throat a little bit. I did test negative this morning, which is like, this day and age, the best you can do. I had a book come out on the 20th called Meme Wars. It's about the last 10 years of net politic, really starting with the Occupy and the tail end of the Ron Paul movement, and bringing you into the day of the insurrection with the Stop the Steal movement. And all the while, me and my co-authors, Brian Friedberg, who's an investigative ethnographer, and Emily Dreyfus, who was a senior editor at Wired, she's a journalist, we charted the rise of different internet factions and talked about where they gained their agility, where they learned how to use the internet. And what we've deduced is that with enough practice, it doesn't really matter what your technical skill set is. Anyone can manipulate the media by using the internet. So we're going to start by giving away a book. Okay, I want everybody to break out your phone or because you're going to type in something into a browser. And whoever returns the correct answer will get a free book on Dean Maurer. So, and I'm sorry, I already signed it. So it's been decimated. It's like, it's worth less than it did before it came in the door, sort of like your Prius. So come on, a car joke out here. Come on, you guys. They're all driving Priuses. Anyway, so if you're ready, you've got a browser window open and you're ready to type, I want you to go to this URL and I want you to tell me what comes up, okay? Antifa.com. You got it? White House. We got fast fingers over here. White House. So that's just one way someone can manipulate a domain and make you think that, good old Joe Biden is the president of Antifa, right? Very simple domain squatting, nothing really nefarious going on there. But journalists will see stuff like that and be like, there's a story here. And some journalists will say, well, it's proof that Joe Biden does command Antifa because all of the Antifa super soldiers get their news from Antifa.com, also known as the White House. And then other people will write a story about internet infrastructure and why it's possible to squat on a domain. But anyhow, that is not part of the lecture. That was just a way for me to stick in your browser history the fact that we are all Antifa now. So sorry about that. It's okay to be a little anti-fascist as a treat. So I like the energy in this room. You're all very good-looking people, so we will proceed. So a couple of definitions by way of getting to know this field. I'm a sociologist, so everything is about relationships. So when I say misinformation, I'm really talking about information whose inaccuracy is unintentional and spread unknowingly. And the difference with disinformation is information that is deliberately false or misleading, often spread for political gain, profit, or to discredit a targeted individual, group, movement, or political party. And we'll go over this and you'll kind of see the differences in the examples that I choose today to show you. Well, sometimes one person's misinformation is another person's disinformation. So we don't always know if someone is in on the joke or in on the operation or not. And so the decision to study memes was really about the decision to try to understand media manipulation and the flows and distributions and diffusions of misinformation and disinformation in a social movements framework. So what we try to do is we look at ABCD. We look at actors, behavior, content, design. And when we write a chapter, or when we think about how to study misinformation, we don't just look at the content and say, is it true or is it false? What we try to look for is, where is the lie? Are people lying about who they are? Are they using botnets or advertising or other kinds of online behaviors to trick algorithms into covering something or bringing something to the top of recommendations? Is it the lie in the content itself? What we know about some disinformation campaigns is they always hold a kernel of truth to them. They can sometimes be backed up very easily, but once you know the whole nuance in the story, it doesn't really hold together. And then, of course, the design, which is the thing that a spokesman for Google once told me. We study actors' behavior, content, fish, 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 design, water. You're as a fish, you cannot study the water. That's what he told me. And I said, okay, I'm going to try it anyway. Right. And so what we try to do is unmask, well, what are the features of the way Facebook works, Twitter works, YouTube works, that aids and abets misinformation and disinformation campaigns and makes them and helps them go viral? What kind of strategic advantages does it give to certain actors that have a lot of money or deep networks? They might have lots of charged up members that want to be mobilized. And then we try to ask ourselves, is that mobilization pro-social or anti-social? Is it pro-democracy or anti-democracy? And that is a hard question because sometimes one person's liberation is another authoritarian's nightmare, right? And so we try to make and do our best to uncover this using lots of historical and qualitative detail. I don't know how to code. I don't do data science. In fact, the data scientist on my team, I said to him, set it up so that I don't need to see you. I don't need to talk to you, but I get the data science. I get the hashtags I want. I get the channels I want. I get the content I want, and it comes up on a dashboard and I can see what the analytics are, and you just sink into the infrastructure and write a book about it while you do it. So Alexei Abrams is now writing a book on building an internet observatory as part of our project, and I'm very, very proud of him. So when we talk about media manipulation, we talk about it in a life cycle approach. This is a trick I learned from data scientists, which is you can kind of put anything into a life cycle and it makes sense. So kudos to them. Sociologists did it first, but like get behind it. But so what I'm going to do is bring you through a case study about this media manipulator, an internet comedian slash provocateur, troll, sometimes white supremacist, anti-trans media figure named Sam Hyde. And we're going to go through all 5 of these steps of the media manipulation life cycle, looking at the ways in which Sam Hyde manipulates the media and how content about Sam Hyde seeps into mainstream conversations. So we look at where the manipulation campaign, where is it planned, who's at the beginning of these stages. Usually we don't start here. We actually start usually knowing about a manipulation campaign in stage 3 when people start responding to it. Because if you try to trace every time someone is wrong on the internet, you end up like that internet meme that's like, can't come to bed, honey, someone's wrong on the internet. So usually we'll see them try to seed the campaign on social platforms in the web, but it really only takes shape if people respond, if platform companies try to deplatform people, if politicians or journalists get duped into covering it a certain way. Stage 4, mitigation, we're looking at actual deplatforming. Do algorithms change? Do chat rooms change so that you can't type the word Jews in, for instance? So Google Super Chat doesn't allow you to type in Jews in some occasions. What kind of effects does that have? But we look at all these different mitigation strategies. Another popular one these days is de-indexing. So they'll leave content up, but you can't search for it. It won't come up in search. And so if you have the whole link, you can get to the content, but if you search through it, you search for it, you won't find it. So that's another tactic of mitigation. And then lastly, we look at the adjustments by manipulators to the new information environments. And we find that if we can track all these things, we can create a case study that is robust enough to put in our media manipulation case book. And all of that research is available open access on mediamanipulation.org. And it's set up for professors and teachers and graduate students to be able to jump right in and teach the material. It's all been peer reviewed and vetted by other specialist colleagues. If you're a graduate student, you like what you see on mediamanipulation.org, we're happy to pay you to write a case study. That's something that I learned actually from being part of communications departments and whatnot, is that blogging can be a really good way to get your start. We also have a team of editors that help us make sure everything has a similar voice. If you're nervous about having an editor, just remind yourself their job is to make your life harder, but the work better. So that's the trade-off. But I find editors to be the most important aspect of getting our work read. So who is Sam Hyde? So there's this meme, he can't keep getting away with it. And since 2015, Sam Hyde has been identified online as the shooter in San Bernardino, Kalamazoo, Essen, Kentucky, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Planned Parenthood Clinic in Colorado Springs, U.S. Naval Base in San Diego, U.S. Air Force Base in San Antonio, among many others. At one point, he posed with pictures of himself with dyed blonde hair and an AK-47 assault rifle to let the world know he was a white supremacist. But it was part of this ironic hedge because this was a staged act, and he put these pictures up online as fodder for other people to look at. And so those kinds of pictures of him started to be seeded across the web. So we started to see, and I was on campus this day during the UCLA school shooting. Sam Hyde was a noted white supremacist and Donald Trump supporter. And so this went viral during that episode. So using breaking news as a way to input media manipulation into the news stream became a forte of folks that were in on the joke with Sam Hyde. He also had a television show on the Cartoon Network called $1 Million Extreme at this time. So there was a Reddit group, and there were other chat groups on game like Discord servers or gaming chat apps where people were talking about how they can insert his image in this meme into the media at breaking news times. So you got Bill O'Reilly saying breaking, one alleged shooter confirmed is white supremacist Sam Hyde, others unconfirmed is yet San Bernardino. And this was one that started to go viral. And we've seen this happen. Other researchers have tracked it. It's happened over 20 times in the last 7 years. And here's how it happens generally is that the design of the internet is such that all of us are always in the same places online. And so just as a cop or a reporter or an internet geek might be sleuthing around trying to figure out what's happening during this mass shooting event, other people are inserting news to try to get it picked up, to clog up those airwaves. And for many of them, in this instance, back during the Sutherland Springs shooting, it was supposed to be funny.
And are you learning any more about how investigators are now piecing information together? Do you know anything about the attacker?
We don't. It was reported to me that he's actually not from this community. Apparently, his name was released as Sam Hyde. That was the name I was given. We don't know any more details. I assume probably there'll be search warrants executed probably later in the day. I assume we'll be trying to get to the bottom of this person's life and what could have motivated him to commit such a tragedy in a community like Wilton.
So just as easy as that, he was quoted as, this news source. He was a politician responding. No doubt someone just gave him this name that had started to circulate on Twitter. He then says it on CNN, and then the trolls get together and rejoice. They job's done. Sam Hyde made it to the news, and one and done, on to the next one. But after a while, other people started picking up and saying, well, if this pattern can happen and these trolls can make this happen every time, almost like you're pushing a lever, then we have a serious problem on our hands, because more and more people are starting to figure that out. Is it this one? No. What am I hiding here? There we go. Got him. So,
and are you learning any more about how investigators are now piecing information?
Pause that.
And are you learning any more about how investigators are now piecing information?
There we go. Shut up. So that responses, I just talked to the computer and told it to shut up. That's right. Those responses by industry activists and especially politicians, if you can dupe a politician into picking up your meme, you're good as gold, because you're going to get that horseshoe effect of people are going to write about it as if it was serious and other people are going to write about it as a joke. And you win both times, because the thing that you wanted to do gets double coverage in the media. So what did we see? We saw New York Times, Business Insider, BuzzFeed, Sam Hyde and other hoaxes, false information, trails Texas shooting. How 4chan tricked the internet into believing this comedian is a mass shooter. don't believe any breaking news that names this comedian as a mass shooter, right? And so online now, when you type in Sam Hyde, you get the debunks as well as the content. And this anonymous message board that had for years pumped up Sam Hyde and circulated his content. He also did a massive hoaxing of TEDx, where he pretended to be this like future philosopher, and his big intervention in the world was to just kill old people, right? Because he was like, well, they're going to die anyway. Paradigm 2070, let's just kill them, right? And so people, get a sense of him. They get a sense of his jovialness, and he doesn't care if his name is associated with being a mass shooter. He's not out here trying to get that content taken down. He's not out here trying to clear his name. He is very much in it for the chaos. And on 4chan, you have this message board of anonymous people. Everybody that posts on there is anonymous, where people do like to, set the internet on fire. And what we track in our book is how white supremacists and misogynists and government operatives all thought about 4chan as a resource to build their private online armies, particularly General Flynn, who later was able to weaponize QAnon and 4chan and the resulting 8chan to create this mass movement that eventually Donald Trump started to acknowledge. But 4chan tends to be, to most people, this mysterious, horrible place. It's not that mysterious. It is definitely horrible. There's some strangeness about it where the QAnon theory of how the world is run is based on this idea that globalists, which we all know is a dog whistle for Jewish people, are harvesting children's hormones in order to stay young and wealthy. And the strangeness of people who want to defend or quote unquote save the children that accumulated on 4chan and 8chan are also in the same place where most accessible on that platform is child pornography. So it's a very bizarre place where the thing that they claim that they're fighting against is also circulating all around them as they look at these clues from this man that, or this person or this collective that is calling themselves QAnon. But anywho, sidetracked, back to Sam. So what kind of mitigations happened? Well, Sam Hyde, he lost his adult TV swim show at $1 Million Extreme after BuzzFeed reported it as an alt-right show. That was a big boon because that was a lot of money. He even had a character on that show that was named David Duke, right? After the very famous white supremacist. And he thought it was all very funny and ironic. And because nobody at Adult Swim or the Cartoon Network's really able to deal with him or to understand those dog whistles, it just went on. And it would have gone on if not for the reporting of Joe Bernstein, who was also the one that caught a bunch of other alt-right leaks over the years. And then in 2018, he was reportedly banned from YouTube and Instagram, but is notoriously all over it in many different ways. So even though he's been banned, what we've gone through is a cycle, what our research team calls a policy spectacle, which is that these companies will come out and say, we got you. We're going to shut down, we just went through one with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to shut the internet off in Russia. No more Russia TV, Russia Today, no more state-sponsored media like YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. We're like, no. And now you can still get access to that content. We went through a policy spectacle around Alex Jones as well, where they claimed they were going to deplatform him and InfoWars. That content is still readily available. So with Sam Hyde, they said, yeah, we got this. And then if you're a researcher, you're just like, this made absolutely no difference. So what were the adjustments by Sam Hyde and others to the new media environment? Well, anybody hear about the ghost of Kyiv? Apparently Adam Kinzinger did. And he tweeted, the ghost of Kyiv had a name and he's obviously owned the Russian Air Force. Godspeed and more kills, Samuel I. And this is a misinformation, a tweet. A Ukrainian ace fighter pilot known as Ghost of Kyiv, real name is Samuel Hyde, a 36-year-old who has been identified as the MiG-29 pilot accredited with downing 6 Russian jets. This obviously is photoshopped. And then the video of the quote unquote Ghost of Kyiv was a video game simulation of a fighter jet knocking down 6 other jets. It was made by someone who thought it would be funny. We actually ended up talking to the young man who had made the original video. He thought it would be funny to put it out, right? Get people pumped up. Everybody's yelling, send planes. It's becoming a whole thing online. And then someone sees that people are picking up the Ghost of Kyiv. They Photoshop this, and then Kinzinger retweets it. And then, of course, we need Reuters to step in. And part of the research that we do on the true cost of misinformation is who pays the tax then? All of these journalists have to write these debunks. We are wasting, we don't have enough money to cover climate change in journalism, but we are wasting untold millions of dollars on debunking internet misinformation because it is so easy and cheap to produce. And if you can get a politician to step in it, it's funny too, right? So what happened? This became fodder in the right-wing media ecosphere. Tucker Carlson said just the other day, Kinzinger posted images on Twitter of Ukrainian air ace called the Ghost of Kyiv. He downed Russian MiGs left and right. Well, it turns out the whole thing was a hoax. But of course, Adam Kinzinger had no idea because he knows nothing. Really, get some respect. People are dying, buffoon. A little weird language there. Kinzinger then attached an obviously photoshopped image of the comedian Sam Hyde sitting in the cockpit of a fighter jet. Sam Hyde, for the record, is not a Ukrainian fighter ace. He's once again a comedian. That was Adam Kinzinger. These are the people pushing us towards a new world war, right? And so you can see how that quickly become politically leveraged in the media ecosystem. All you hear really is Ghost of Kyiv and that this Congress member was duped, but we don't quite get the news about Ukraine, right? It becomes a distraction by and large from what's really going on. So by way of a long example, and I did that because our friends in anthropology would kill me if I didn't start with the empirics. So that one is for you guys. We'll go back now a little bit and talk about what is a meme. Can I get a time check? Okay, that's where I'm going. I got 10 minutes. I got 15. I feel like I'm negotiating here. Can I get a sip of my soda? Okay, all right, 15 and 1 sip. Okay, perfect. So a meme is an idea, behavior, or style or usage that spreads from a person to a person within a culture. It can also spread within intergenerationally. So we see memes get spread in many different ways. They can be images, they can be slogans. They tend to be just small tidbits of culture. One of the memes that most Americans are intimately familiar with because it's been remixed so many times is this one in the middle, which is a buff old man saying, "I want you for the US Army." And not many people know that it actually was styled on this poster that came in the London Opinion. So not many people know that the most iconic embodiment of our body politic was stolen. But that's the great thing about memes is they can be remixed. They have these cultural echoes, resonances. You get that feeling. Of course, you see Trump here with the broad shoulders, just like you saw Uncle Sam with the broad shoulders. But this has been remixed endlessly in US and other places. So this meme travels through time. It's repurposed constantly. In the book, we also look at the Gadsden flag, that "Don't Tread on Me" flag with the rattlesnake on it as another kind of mimetic object that has traveled through many movements. So when we talk about meme war, though, we're really talking about something pretty specific and totally boring, okay? Which is that meme wars are the use of slogans, images, and video on social media in persuasive political campaigns. So that's the sociologist in me being like, I have to answer your question, what is a meme war? That's as basic as we can get it. And usually what happens is that memes are sticky, they're participatory, they're remixable, they're usually include some kind of a slogan, but they only resonate with you if you're part of the in-group. And we will see many memes throughout the day and they don't resonate with us, so we don't pay attention. Like, I know on your campus, there's a whole subdivision of anteaters stuff. I don't get it. It looks weird to me, but y'all are proud anteaters. I get it. And I can't even name, was the UCSD where I graduated, were they the Tritons or something? We're like just this like burly merman. Like, I don't know. Anyway. But yeah, so, but when you do these meme wars, usually it's people that are coming into some kind of confrontation about the definition of a piece of culture. So we often see meme wars play out, not necessarily related to political parties, because those don't really stick that well, but they play out a lot related to culture wars. So anything that's about race, we'll see meme wars come up. LGBTQ rights, immigration, anything that's got these highly polarized sides to them, we'll see meme wars play out online. And what we're trying to understand as researchers is, how do they scale? How do they go from a few shit posters on 4chan all the way up to Adam Kinzinger or Donald Trump or any other politician? So authorless, in groups and out groups, they're sticky, they promote participation. So the original Pepe, as a meme example, is something that confounds a lot of us because it was very banal in its start. It's a comic book artist named Matt Fury. He has this comic called Boy's Life. So this is the most iconic piece of this comic book series, where this frog man goes up to a toilet, he pulls his pants down, and I had to censor it because I had to give this presentation to the Secretary of Defense. And I was like, I'm not going to be showing frog butt to Ash Carter. So like, let me just step back and put these censorship bars on. So Dog Man comes over, knocks on the door, and is like, whoops. And then later that day, Dog Man says to Pepe, hey, I heard you pull your pants down all the way to go pee. And Pepe responds, feels good, man. Right? Most women have no idea why this is funny. And all the men are like, I would be horrified if I walked into a bathroom and somebody's butt cheeks were just hanging in the wind at the urinal. Because apparently, like, all the infrastructure of our genes are about how men go to the bathroom. I never really understood the button fly. I never really understood flies on jeans anyway. It's a man thing, right? So, but apparently you're not supposed to drop trow. That's it. Moral of the story. And then there's a kind of Freudian, like, feels good man. And that tiny little piece of feels good man became the iconic Pepe meme. And that meme is something that is really easy to draw. It's really easy to adapt. And many people online, before even the days of emoticons or emojis, would share this, or they would remake Pepe into some other character. And then it got dark because there are all of these rare Pepes that were Pepe as who is that guy again? I'm messing with you guys, sorry. And then of course the other one. And what was interesting is that Trump started to tweet about Pepe. And if I had more time, I'd go back into the roots of meme magic, which our book goes into, and thinking about, well, who was listening during Occupy? And we go into the first chapter, this whole bit on Andrew Breitbart and Steve Bannon made a movie together called Occupy Unmasked, where they were really watching closely how internet populism worked and what kind of messages motivated people. And that movie, most people have never looked at, and nobody had ever told a right-wing history of Occupy until we wrote it. And I know that because I wrote my dissertation on it and like was obsessed with the anarcho-progressive side of Occupy for many years. But once I started to dig in and realized where And the Fed had come from, which was very popular at Occupy, I realized, oh, this is an iteration that Ron Paul had made popular. He wrote a book called And the Fed, but it actually came to him from a group of students that chanted it to him at one of his campus visits. So And the Fed even has this mimetic amorphous history to it. But it ends up at Occupy and it becomes this organizing point. And when you start to see different factions grow out of Occupy, there is this libertarian right-wing faction that we choose to follow online and understand where they go from Occupy. And one of the pivotal moments is in 2016 Meme Magic. You see, we could have written a book about Bernie Sanders' Dank Meme Stash and how great that was. Bernie Sanders was an iconic piece of mimetic media when a little birdie sat on his podium and stared at him like the Snow White he is, right? And it was a big deal. So Bernie Sanders turned into, of course, in 2016, you've got Trump tweeting Pepe's. He also tweets this, which is the first instance in which people started to really go deep on where is Trump getting his content. Because this was a meme that came straight out of Stormfront, which is a neo-Nazi message board. And Trump tried to explain it away by saying, oh, that's a 6-pointed sheriff star. Oh, the money in the background, that doesn't mean anything. This isn't a bunch of Jewish dog whistles, pay no attention. And of course, once it was shown where it came from, this is one of a few tweets that Trump deleted. And then we had the most awesome memer of all, our girl Hillary. She really kicked it out of the park with I'm With Her, right? How many of you, when you saw this image earlier, was like, that's disinformation? I mean, I literally used it next to the word disinformation, right? So they stole her image, like her little icon, and they used this draft my wife hashtag, and they went on Flickr and they got pictures of people and they made this content, and they launched this whole campaign to make it look like Hillary Clinton supported putting women into the draft. This is actually a picture of my friend who I went to undergrad with. He's now a pediatrician in Canada. And his wife does not want to fight against Russia. She's just a peaceful Canadian. But someone saw this on Reddit and posted it on his Facebook wall with a "this you, bro." And he was like, it is, but I'm not going to poke the bear. Like, just let it happen. I'm not getting involved. And I saw it and immediately realized there's no content moderator online that's going to figure out that this is disinformation because of the participatory nature of our political ecosystem online. And there were others. He died for his country. Now it's her turn. My wife's son asked when mommy's coming home. I told him when she's done beating Russia, right? And that's full of all kinds of other 4chan trolly dog whistles about my wife's son. And the picture that they chose, of course, right? So this is how they think liberals engage with the internet. They're like, liberals are gonna love this. And it was pushed by some of the known provocateurs over the years, Jack Posobiec, Malik Obama, and many others. And then we had Hillary during 2016, was really just providing cannon fodder for the online trolls. She used the basket of deplorables saying she had done a explainer on Pepe the Frog. They started to troll her mercilessly online. And by the end of 2016, her campaign online was just in absolute dumpster fire because of the way in which all of this online content wrapped up around her. So I'm going to end by giving you some keys to understand the meme wars as they're coming up in our lives. Fash Wave kind of looks like this. It's got this deep fried kind of look. I see you three back there laughing at me. I get it. I'm not even supposed to be here talking about this. This is a job. I work at Harvard. Masculinity is a sacred thing. White boy summer. This is Dylan Roof, who committed the murders at the church in Charleston. White boy summer. So really using that imagery in ways that if you didn't know what you were looking at, you wouldn't stop to question it. America First. This was a group of people that ended up at the Capitol riot. They're headed up by this man in the corner, Nick Fuentes, who's been kicked off of most of every platform, but somehow still continues to reemerge with enough funding to build his own infrastructure for streaming. So they tend to use this smug Pepe look in the Joker. The book chapter in our about him is called Joker Politics. He is the one that brought the energy of destroy the GOP to January 6th. So this wasn't just about, dealing with conservative politics or stolen election. Virtual and white supremacists and others saw this as an opportunity to wedge the party and to create a MAGA faction. And now we have at least 60 candidates running for office in the midterms under America First platform. So that meme, we're going to write an op-ed about it, but that meme is stronger than the candidates themselves because the meme goes on, but the candidates aren't doing so hot. Adam Waffen Division have committed a couple of murders. I am this close to committing political violence again. It's kind of funny because it's Ross from Friends. You could kind of picture him saying that. But anything that's got that skull mask and this kind of laurel leaf design with the biohazard, we see a lot of black and yellows being used, except for that one. I'll give it a pass. It's a stone shirt. But a lot of black and yellows are being used by racists online, and then they show up in these colors so that they can identify each other. And then, of course, the Proud Boys, who were able to monetize around Trump's saying of stand back and stand by. They've stolen this laurel leaf from Fred Perry, who is actually a very anti-racist clothing brand and has been since the days of when Eric Clapton came out as a racist. They founded this concert called Rock Against Racism. And so Fred Perry has struggled over the years to separate their brand from skinheads. So when the Proud Boys were choosing their logo, they went there because of the skinheads in the late 60s, early 70s that were wearing Fred Perry clothing. So it's a racist dog whistle, but it also appeals to punk rockers and hardcore kids. Generation Identity, this one is more international. They have a book for sale on Amazon. If you really want to get your white nationalist ideology, you can get that book there. They're the ones that have really been pushing replacement theory into the world. And so the murderer in Christchurch, he had given money to Generation Identity, $1,500, and he wrote a fan letter to them before he went and murdered all those people. And he wrote his manifesto, which is usually you'll see the political violence and then you'll see the manifesto happen. And the manifesto will be pushing some kind of old racist rhetoric. This one is replacement theory, and they have a whole stream of memes around replacement theory. When it gets interesting is the Buffalo Manifesto was a total joke to the guy who made it. So this is a clip of the Buffalo Manifesto. My most recent self pictures are below. We know who that is now, right? So journalists were getting the Buffalo Manifesto and were printing this picture saying he provided us pictures of himself, right? And anybody that knows how to do reverse image search finds that these are not true. So he says, the truth is my personal lives and experiences are of no value. I am simply a white man seeking to protect and serve my community, my people, my culture, and my race, right? So in this manifesto are memes not meant for the mainstream media, but for other people like him to, absorb and resonate with and look for in other online communities. This is another meme that he used. You wait for a signal while your people wait for you. What do you want? And then this is the 14 words, which I'm not going to say out loud, because if somebody makes a recording clip of this, I'm going to lose my job if I'm saying this racist saying out loud. But the 14 words is something that you'll see 1488 will be hashtagged. And that means this slogan plus 88, which means Hail Hitler, because it's the eighth letter. So then I'll speed up here at the end. So we know that there's another influence op on its way. Dark MAGA, Ultra MAGA was something they tried to launch on 4chan. It was kind of a no-go. Madison Cawthorn, when he lost his election, started to post things on his Instagram saying, it's time for Dark MAGA to truly take command. And he lists out who he thinks are part of Dark MAGA. That's a coded reference to the Bane Dark Knight Rises. But this is this idea that Dark MAGA is on its way. Ultra Dark MAGA, though, is something that we're starting to see astroturf. Here's a picture of Marjorie Taylor Greene, Paul Gosar. Trump in Wyoming said this is ultra MAGA country. And so they're really coordinated in ways that we don't quite understand unless you read my book. But they are using memes as a means of revolutionizing political communication. And then we had them posting on 4chan in this way, which I thought was kind of cute. I'm going to read this. It says, is it true that Trump is going to sweep the nation again with a brand new campaign built around dark MAGA? Word on the street is that it's no bullshit version of MAGA, as if like the only version of MAGA is just bullshit, right? Like, come on, guys, a kind of MAGA 2.0, which takes all the winning aspects we love so much and cranks them up to 11. Anybody getting that Spinal Tap reference there? You know, like our amps go to 11. Yeah, like this is for boomers. This is my crowd, right? Word is the one that once Trump gets back on Twitter, that's when it's all going to get going again, with him announcing his run for presidency soon after. And the response on 4chan was like there, one guy wrote, and this was, I think it comes up here, force meme, they tried to astroturf here, rolled out and was mocked mercilessly. Ultra MAGA is their next attempt. So like, this is not for Zoomers. This is not for Gen Z. Who even is this? Who knows? Who's watching Grease? Yeah, like it came back when she passed, RIP, rest in power, but it was weird. And then they got this one, which is kind of like Hulk Hogan meets patriotism, meets like Marvel, and so the kids get it though. They get that they're So Let's Go Brandon is now turning into Dark Brandon. And this is a response meme where you had Let's Go Brandon, which was a chant that was happening at a NASCAR rally that was F Joe Biden. And the person holding the mic was talking to a man called Brandon who had just won the race. And she goes, are they chanting Let's Go Brandon? And he's like, yeah, I think that's it, right? And so you see the rep from South Carolina wearing a Let's Go Brandon piece of merch, and you see an explosion of merch around Let's Go Brandon. And then Dark Brandon arises, right? But now we know this is far-right aesthetics, right? So the minute that the media starts to clue in and realize where this aesthetic comes from, that kind of fash wave look, and who it's appealing to and who came up with it first, you're going to have a cycle of news around Dark Brandon that is not a good look for an ailing presidency. So what does it all mean? No longer an emerging technology imbued with the possibility of fostering social change by giving voice to small groups. Social media has become a tool of the powerful to dominate, harass, and coerce vulnerable groups. If we do not acknowledge this shift, the freest speech will benefit only those who are already powerful. That's the talk. Thank you. Please clap.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Joan, for this book and for this talk. This was really fun. The book was so fun to read, obviously, following your work for a long time, but the book is like this great deep dive into, current history. It's wonderful. And there are so many connections that even, living this and researching it, that the three of you bring together that, is wonderful. So thank you so much for that. One of the things that really stood out for me while I was reading the book was how bad it was for, one of these shitlords, as they style themselves, to be successful. And there are a whole bunch of examples in the book. I mean, obviously, the people who are getting indicted and jailed for January 6th are recent examples, but you go back to early cases of people whose lives were ruined because their ideas took off in some way. And I think we even see that with the Sam Hyde example, right? I mean, this goes from sort of grassroots alternative media campaign hyping his, comedy work and his stuff on Adult Swim to not having a show on Adult Swim, not having the kind of access to platforms that he had been using so successful. I mean, you see it with Milo Yiannopoulos. I mean, I think there are lots of people like this who either they go too far, they step on the wrong person's toes, something happens. And, I was interested as, there's a kind of tension that emerges, right? Between, on the one hand, the people who are already powerful, who are using successful memes to their advantage, and this idea of a kind of a successful fringe who's really pushing their ideology out and taking power. When you look at the individuals, it doesn't look like a grassroots movement of people taking power. It looks like a lot of stuff out there. The stuff that's convenient for people who already have power being somehow, taken and used. And I wonder if you could talk about that tension.
Yeah, I think, some of the ways in which influencers become influencers, you guys get the meme? Few of you know, social media influencers, we just hang out on the internet. But yes, the kittens, exactly. They take a lot of other people's stuff. There's different documentaries about this. People will use the internet they'll see something they know that's resonating. They'll see something that's funny. They'll make their Instagram account into a meme account, and then they'll every 3 or 4 messages push some sponsored content. But we didn't anticipate that those same rails, to borrow from you, Bill, those same rails not just become the rails that your work shows currency travels on, but our political communication. And so I could have told this story through the lens of people that are doing entrepreneurial political work by building, their Kardashian account up. And then when it comes time for an election, they pivot to doing election information. And we did have Bloomberg really at the beginning of the primaries utilizing Instagram as a new way of delivering his message to the masses. The problem was nobody was going to vote for Bloomberg, like not even like his family, right? They were just like, get this guy out of politics. But yeah, so I think like when it comes to this new architecture online, the work and the way in which we have kept candidates on this same pathway and the idea of the fairness doctrine and whatnot, it meant that everybody's supposed to get equal time for their ideas, that we're supposed to give public interest content. But with the internet, none of that applies. Every single one of us is an individual television station, apparently. And so nobody is responsible for what goes across the airwaves. And you've seen time and time again, people who are willing to invest in the infrastructure. We do a lot in the book on folks like Milo Yiannopoulos, Ben Shapiro. The right-wing media ecosystem online is different than the left wing or the center because of the way that it is paid for and resourced. Not to get like nerdy sociologist about it, but like it's a very clear line from resource mobilization theory to who gets, elected based on the attention and the money they put into their campaigns. But what we can't know right now is what the effect of those influencers, the unearned media, the free-for-all online is going to have on the quality of candidates that rise to the top, and then how that political money is circulated. Because we just had some really strange things happen in this most recent election where Democrats were funding ultra far-right candidates in the primaries to get them to win so that they would be an easier so-called target in the general election. But I don't know if they're going to lose, right? And that would be worse for the people, right? And so you don't want to play in these politics without having a sound understanding of the ethical, moral, and obviously the consequences of how that's going to move from the wires to the weeds, like how people are going to have to manifest their lives differently as a result of all of these contingent experiments in democracy that we're seeing on the internet right now. It's no longer, like the move on of the Occupy days.
So, and open it up to questions.
We can go a few minutes over. I'm sorry. I got like amped up. I stopped looking at the clock. You paid for, I give you whatever you want. Yeah.
Really interested in the mitigation part of the cycle you showed. Whether deplatforming is like an applicable thing that actually works. I think we've seen like recently these high profile ones like Alex Jones, Andrew Tate, and Sam Hyde, who've
Yeah.
become kind of lightning rods, and kind of it's amplified their status as like, I guess, memeable status.
Mhm.
So I guess is that the way to counter this information, or is it doing worse?
I mean, I don't know if we could do any worse than what's happening, right? This is where we don't have enough research to say what you have to really define works before you can say something does or doesn't do something, right? If you look in the individual cases of famous deplatforming, yes, it works. Why does it work? Because if you're not on YouTube, nobody's getting the ping that says you just went live. You don't have that infrastructure usually at the ready on your website. So what we see in terms of audience is that someone will get removed from YouTube. They'll go to one of these B-list platforms. They won't have all the literal bells and whistles to notify their audiences that they're going live. They don't have the way to take in money that they do through YouTube super chats. And generally they end up with 1/3 or less of the audience that they had. Well, what is that evidence of? It's evidence that people just go on YouTube to watch what's on, just like you might turn the cable TV on and see what's on and browse. And so people are going to YouTube and watching what's there, but they're not necessarily following these people off platform when they get removed. We need a lot more research on that because we want to know who's moving. Particularly, we want to know, what the demographics are, and if they're children under 13 in particular, because children under 13 are not supposed to be using the internet unsupervised. There's laws against collecting data on children. But yeah, I was quoted in a Vice article early on that like proclaimed like deplatforming works. And I was like, it's much more nuanced than that. And I think that one of the things we have to understand about the built environments of the internet is that it pulls on our belief system, just like someone who would play the lottery believes they've got a chance at winning. People go on and post things because they think they might go viral. But if you knew how much work goes into making an influencer or making this content move and the amount of money that gets spent on it, you'd realize very quickly that this is a business, and algorithms and algorithmic manipulation is part of the business. And where that gets bought and sold, either on platform or off, is something that we need to regulate at this point, because otherwise it's just the rich people getting richer and driving us all crazy in the meantime. Say that hyperbolically. Yeah, because there's people on Zoom. It's my big Zoom fans over here. Andy, back up.
Thanks so much for your talk. Super interesting stuff. I'm gonna ask an old person's question. I'm an old
Yes.
person.
I'm here for you.
So what I took away from the actual empirical material is the sheer chaos and almost kind of chaos theory version of it all. That it goes from one meme and this develops to that and that goes to this, and then Pepe the Frog gets a new set of lips drawn on him and then he pulls down his pants and okay.
Yeah.
And the dots I want you to connect for me, and I believe you, right? So the dots is from between the sheer chaos of a new sort of information, which is unclear how it's actually being absorbed by any human beings out there, and your last slide. And your last slide had a very clear thesis,
Mhm.
And that was about, this is going to reinforce the power of the already powerful. And I'm not convinced. Well, I haven't seen the dots connected. I'm sure you do, right? But tell me, I have your book, so I'm going to read the book, but
Yeah.
tell me how you do that.
Yeah. So, and there's some nuggets hidden within the slide deck where I show you Marjorie Taylor Greene is memeing herself, Paul Gosar is memeing himself, and Trump is memeing himself. And you had Bernie that tried to do it but couldn't. You had Hillary Clinton that just used this very banal kind of postcard campaign. It didn't really take off any which way. And towards the end, what I really wanted to show you is that the far right isn't so far anymore. And that the style and the aesthetic and the things that draw people in about memes and the desire to make ones yourself come from somewhere. And when we see the presidents and the presidential social media team deciding that Dark Brandon is the way to go, they're going to dig in on this meme. And you realize it comes from the far right. Right? We have to think about our political communication, our political theory differently now, because they are using similar methods and methodologies for making things go viral that come from below, ostensibly, but from these very, very dark places. And Trump had been doing it in 2016. And now we're starting to see everybody that wants to have a campaign is going to have to play in this meme sphere. Now, I could have done an ending around Stop the Steal and showed you the same mechanics that got people into the streets during Occupy are the things that brought Stop the Steal together. What's interesting about Stop the Steal is everybody sees it in 2020 and is like, oh my God, what's going to happen here? We don't know. But if you look at the web history of Stop the Steal, Roger Stone bought that domain in 2015. He was fully expecting Trump to lose and to launch this meme and to get people riled up and to trouble democracy. Bannon is a populist. He wants to bring his Christian nationalist message to the world. And so Bannon, throughout the book, plays this role of continuously able to create street movements that then move into our mainstream public rhetoric. And most of the time, they're able to set the agenda on culture and on how we understand cultural issues. But if I were to end with Stop the Steal, people get it. I feel like they get that this is a social movement, much like any other, and that they're mobilized through memes and they find each other through these memes. But I thought tonight it was going to be more important to tell you more about how to unlock those keyholes so that when you see things happening, you don't just say, I should share this, everybody else is sharing this. You're going to want to know, oh, those laser eyes, where do they come from? Right? You're going to want to know why it's done this way. And you'll see, like, if you follow the Dr. Oz Fetterman campaigns right now, they've got Oz dressed up as Cruella de Vil saying that he kills puppies. You've got Fetterman out here with the Don't Tread on Weed flag. I mean, they are pulling out all the stops in that campaign. And it looks like spaghetti at the wall, because, they have no idea what's going to stick. And I think that that's something that we have to think about in terms of if we are going to create policy or imagine a public interest internet or imagine doing anything differently, we're also going to have to create a whole of society approach to that and make sure that our politicians understand that it's not about a race to the bottom here, right? Like, you don't want to play in these symbols because you don't understand them. And then when you finally do, you're going to realize that, Godwin's law is a little true, which is at the bottom of the internet, it's just Nazis. Uh-oh, I said something. You guys are like, oh no, oh no.
With that, please join me in thanking Professor Donovan.
Thank you.
Talk after.
Oh, I didn't realize I wasn't standing close enough to this. My bad.